There are times in life when we all feel stuck. The situation looks impossible. The report says there's no way out. The bank account is empty. The doors are closed. The dream seems too far away. But let me remind you today, just because you don't see a way doesn't mean God isn't making one. God is a way maker. He doesn't need the right conditions. He doesn't need people to agree. He doesn't even need logic to be on your side. When He speaks, things shift. When He moves, obstacles crumble. When He declares something over your life, nothing can stand in His way. In the book of Exodus, the Israelites were trapped between Pharaoh's army and the Red Sea. They had nowhere to go. It looked like the end. But what did God do? He parted the waters and made a way where there was no way. Notice, He didn't remove the sea. He didn't build a bridge. He did something no one had ever seen before. He split the waters so His people could walk through on dry ground. That's how God works. He doesn't just deliver you. He does it in a way that leaves no doubt that it was His hand moving in your life. Sometimes in life it feels like nothing is happening. You've been praying, believing, doing the right thing, but you don't see any changes. The situation looks the same. The doors are still closed. The dream still seems far away. But just because you don't see anything happening doesn't mean God isn't working. God works behind the scenes in ways we can't always see. He is orchestrating things in your favor, lining up the right people, shifting circumstances, and preparing opportunities that will come at just the right time. Just because you don't see movement doesn't mean the miracle isn't in progress. Think about Joseph in the Bible. God gave him a dream that he would one day be in a position of great influence. But instead of stepping straight into his destiny, he was betrayed by his own brothers, sold into slavery, and thrown into prison for something he didn't do. For years, it seemed like nothing was happening. But the truth is, God was working behind the scenes. Every challenge was part of the plan. The betrayal positioned him for the palace. The prison was a setup for promotion. When the time was right, in one day, Joseph was taken from the prison to the palace, second in command of Egypt. What looked like years of silence was actually years of preparation. The delay wasn't denial, it was development. God was strengthening Joseph, maturing him, and getting him ready for the greater blessing. And the same is true for you. Just because you don't see anything changing doesn't mean God isn't working. He's setting things up in ways you can't even imagine. In John 13:7, Jesus said, "You do not realize now what I am doing, but later you will understand." There are things God is doing in your life right now that you may not understand. You may wonder why a door closed, why a friend walked away, why a situation didn't work out. But what if that closed door was protecting you? What if that delay was setting you up for something better? What if God is working behind the scenes for a breakthrough that's bigger than what you were asking for? When you trust God's process, you don't have to worry when things don't make sense. You don't have to get frustrated when the answer doesn't come right away. You can rest in the confidence that God is in control. He sees the bigger picture. He knows what's best for you. Think about a farmer planting seeds. After the seeds go into the ground, there's a season where nothing seems to be happening. But underneath the soil, the roots are growing. The foundation is being established. If the farmer gave up because he didn't see immediate results, he would miss the harvest. In the same way, just because you don't see anything yet doesn't mean your breakthrough isn't on the way. God is not just working on your situation. He's working on you. He's developing your character, stretching your faith, and preparing you for greater things. If He gave you everything you asked for right now, you might not be ready to handle it. But when the time is right, He will bring it to pass. Isaiah 60:22 says, "When the time is right, I, the Lord, will make it happen." Notice, it doesn't say you have to make it. It doesn't say you have to figure everything out. Your job is to trust, to stay in faith, and to keep doing the right thing. God's job is to bring the breakthrough at the perfect time. So don't get discouraged when you don't see the progress. Keep believing. Keep declaring His promises. Keep trusting that He is working behind the scenes, because when God moves, He doesn't just do a small thing. He exceeds expectation. He does more than you could ever ask, think, or imagine. Your time is coming, and what He's been preparing behind the scenes will soon be revealed. We all face setbacks in life. Unexpected challenges, disappointments, failures, things that make it seem like we're going in the wrong direction. Maybe you lost a job, a relationship ended, a dream didn't work out the way you planned. It's easy to feel discouraged, to think that you've missed your chance, that things will never turn around. But let me remind you today, your setback is not the end of your story. In fact, your setback is just a setup for a comeback. God never allows a challenge in your life unless He has a greater purpose for it. What looks like a failure is often a divine setup. That closed door, that difficult season, that unexpected loss, it's not there to stop you. It's there to reposition you for something greater. Think about Joseph in the Bible. He had a dream that he would one day be a great leader, but instead of stepping straight into his destiny, he was betrayed by his own brothers, thrown into a pit, sold into slavery, and falsely accused. Everything in his life seemed to be going in the wrong direction. If anyone had a reason to give up, it was Joseph. But what Joseph couldn't see was that God was using every setback as a stepping stone toward his destiny. If Joseph had never been sold into slavery, he would have never ended up in Egypt. If he had never been falsely accused and thrown into prison, he would have never met the man who introduced him to Pharaoh. And if he had never met Pharaoh, he would have never been placed in a position of power to save millions of lives, including his own family. What looked like a series of devastating setbacks was actually a divine setup for an incredible comeback. Maybe today you're in a season of struggle. You're wondering why things aren't working out, why doors are closing, why life seems unfair. But let me encourage you, God is still in control. He's not finished with your story. The very thing that looks like a disappointment is actually part of His plan to take you higher. In the book of Job, we see another example of a powerful comeback. Job lost everything, his health, his wealth, his family. But despite his suffering, he kept his faith. And in the end, God restored everything he had lost, giving him double for his trouble. That's how our God works. He doesn't just bring you back to where you were. He brings you back better, stronger, and more blessed than before. Maybe you lost a job, but God has a better opportunity waiting for you. Maybe a relationship ended, but God is preparing someone who will love and value you the way you deserve. Maybe you've experienced a season of struggle, but on the other side, there's a breakthrough bigger than you imagined. Romans 8:28 tells us, and we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love Him, who have been called according to His purpose. Notice, it doesn't say some things, it says all things. That means even the setbacks, the delays, the disappointments, God is using it all for your good. Your story is not over. The best days of your life are still ahead. What the enemy meant for harm, God is turning for good. The doors that closed were not meant to destroy you. They were meant to direct you towards something greater. So don't let discouragement take root. Don't let failure define you. Keep believing, keep trusting, and keep moving forward. Because when God writes your comeback story, it's always bigger, better, and more powerful than you could have imagined. Life is full of challenges. There are moments when the odds seem stacked against us, when we don't see a way out, when everything in the natural tells us that it's impossible. But the good news is we don't serve a natural God. We serve a supernatural God. And when you put your faith in Him, doors that seemed locked forever will suddenly swing open. Faith is the key that unlocks the miraculous. Many times we pray for a breakthrough. We ask God for healing, for provision, for restoration, but we allow doubt to creep in. We look at the situation and think it's too late, it's too hard, or I don't see how this can ever change. But faith is not about seeing, it's about believing. The moment you choose to trust God, the moment you step out in faith, that's when miracles begin to unfold. Think about the woman with the issue of blood in the Bible. She had been sick for 12 years, spent all she had on doctors, and nothing had worked. But one day she heard that Jesus was passing by. She could have stayed home. She could have accepted her condition. But instead she made a decision. She chose faith. She pushed through the crowd, reached out, and touched the hem of Jesus' garment. And in that instant she was healed. Jesus turned to her and said, "Daughter, your faith has made you well. Notice, he didn't say, my power has healed you, or it was my decision to restore you. No, he said, your faith has made you well. Her faith opened the door to her miracle. Maybe today you're facing a difficult situation. Maybe the medical report isn't good. Maybe you've been struggling financially. Maybe you've been believing for a dream, but it feels like nothing is changing. Let me remind you, God is still on the throne. He is still in the miracle working business. The same God who healed that woman, who parted the Red Sea, who raised Lazarus from the dead, that same God is working in your life. The question is, will you step out in faith? Will you believe before you see it? Will you praise Him before the answer comes? Because faith isn't just believing when everything is going well. It's believing when there's no sign of change. It's trusting when you don't have the answer yet. Hebrews 11:6 tells us, without faith, it is impossible to please God. Why? Because faith is what moves the heart of God. Faith is what causes mountains to move, doors to open, and the impossible to become possible. Remember Peter? He was in the boat with the other disciples when Jesus came walking on the water. Peter could have stayed where it was safe, where it was comfortable, but he saw Jesus and said, Lord, if it's you, tell me to come to you on the water. And Jesus said one word, come. Peter stepped out of the boat and he walked on water. Notice the miracle didn't happen while Peter was sitting in the boat. The miracle happened when he stepped out in faith. As long as he kept his eyes on Jesus, he was walking on the impossible. But the moment he looked at the wind and the waves, he began to sink. That's what happens when we let doubt in. Fear pulls us down. But the good news is, when Peter started to sink, Jesus immediately reached out and lifted him up. Maybe you've stepped out in faith, but the circumstances are making you doubt. Maybe you've started believing, but now the enemy is whispering, it's not going to happen. God's not going to come through. Let me remind you, don't let the wind and waves distract you. Keep your eyes on Jesus. Keep speaking His promises. Keep declaring His favor, because your faith is opening doors that no man can shut. Faith is believing for rain before you see a single cloud in the sky. Faith is thanking God for the healing while you're still dealing with the symptom. Faith is praising Him for the breakthrough while you're still in the battle. God is looking for people who will trust Him no matter what. People who will say, God, I don't see it yet, but I know you are working. I don't understand it all, but I trust your plan. I believe you are making a way where there seems to be no way. When you live like that, when you walk by faith and not by sight, you'll see miracles take place. You'll see doors open, opportunities come, and breakthroughs happen. Because faith is the key that unlocks the impossible. And when you dare to believe, God will do what only He can do. Sometimes in life, we face closed doors. Opportunities that don't work out, relationships that end, jobs that slip through our fingers. It's easy to get discouraged and wonder, why did this happen? Why did I lose that opportunity? Why didn't things go the way I planned? But what if I told you that the closed door wasn't a setback? It was a setup for something greater. God doesn't close doors to disappoint you. He closes doors to redirect you. He knows what's best for your life. He sees what you can't see. That door may have looked like a great opportunity, but what if it was going to limit you? What if it was beneath what He had planned for you? What if He closed it because He had something better on the way? Think about Moses. He was raised in Pharaoh's palace, in line to be a powerful ruler in Egypt. But one day he made a mistake and everything changed. He was forced to flee into the desert, leaving behind everything he had known. To Moses, it must have felt like his life was over. He went from royalty to being a shepherd in the wilderness. But what looked like a closed door was actually part of God's plan. In the desert, God was preparing Moses. He was strengthening him, teaching him, molding him into the leader he needed to be. If Moses had stayed in Egypt, he would have never fulfilled his true purpose, to lead the Israelites out of slavery and into the promised land. The closed door led to something far greater. Maybe you've had a door close in your life. Maybe you were believing for something, but it didn't work out the way you expected. Let me encourage you. God is still in control. He is still ordering your steps. That door didn't close to stop you. It closed to move you toward your destiny. Revelation 3:8 says, I have placed before you an open door that no one can shut. Notice, when God opens a door, no person, no setback, no bad break can keep you from it. The key is to trust Him even when doors close. Think about Ruth. She faced one of the biggest disappointments of her life when her husband passed away. She could have given up, let bitterness take root, and lived in self-pity. But instead, she chose to trust God's plan. She followed her mother-in-law, Naomi, to a new land. She didn't know what was ahead, but she believed God had something for her. Because of her faithfulness, God led her straight into the field of Boaz, a wealthy landowner. Not only did Boaz provide for her, but he eventually married her, and Ruth became the great-grandmother of King David, part of the lineage of Jesus. What looked like a closed door, losing her husband, was actually leading her into something far greater than she could have imagined. Maybe today you're in a season where things aren't making sense. Maybe a job opportunity fell through, a relationship ended, or a dream feels out of reach. But let me remind you, God is not finished with your story. What He started in your life, He will bring to completion. Proverbs 3:5-6 says, trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to Him, and He will make your path straight. That means you don't have to figure everything out. You don't have to understand why the door closed. You just have to trust that God is leading you to something better. Every time a door closes, thank God for it. It's a sign that He's directing your steps. Don't look at it as a loss. Look at it as a redirection. God is too good to leave you where you are. He loves you too much to let you settle for less than His best. So keep believing, keep moving forward, because that closed door is leading you to greater opportunities, greater blessings, and greater favor than you've ever seen before. There are moments in life when we face situations that seem impossible. The obstacle is too big. The problem is too overwhelming. The dream feels too far out of reach. In the natural, there's no way out. The odds are stacked against you, and every voice tells you it's not going to happen. But here's the good news. God specializes in the impossible. What seems impossible to you is possible with Him. He created the universe by speaking a word. He parted the Red Sea. He made water come out of a rock. He raised the dead, healed the sick, and fed thousands with just a few loaves and fish. The same God who performed miracles in the Bible is the same God working in your life today. The question is, will you believe? Will you trust that even when it looks like there's no way, God is still on the throne? Because the impossible is where He does His best work. Think about Abraham and Sarah. God promised them a child, but as the years passed, nothing happened. Sarah was well past childbearing age, and in the natural, it was impossible. But God had already spoken the promise. In Genesis 18:14, He asks, is anything too hard for the Lord? The answer is no. At the right time, Sarah gave birth to Isaac, and the promise was fulfilled. Maybe today, you're facing a situation that looks impossible. The medical report doesn't look good. The financial struggle is overwhelming. You've been praying for a breakthrough, but nothing seems to change. Let me encourage you, God is not limited by what you see. He is not restricted by time, resources, or human ability. In the book of Exodus, the Israelites were trapped between the Red Sea and Pharaoh's army. From their perspective, it was over. There was no way out. But God told Moses, stretch out your staff. And when he did, the waters parted and they walked through on dry ground. Notice, God didn't remove the Red Sea. He made a way through it. Sometimes God doesn't take away the problem. He makes a way in the middle of it. He steps into the impossible and turns it into a testimony of His power. In Luke 1:37, the angel told Mary, for with God nothing shall be impossible. Imagine being a young girl, told she would give birth to the Son of God, even though she had never been with a man. In the natural, it didn't make sense, but God wasn't asking Mary to figure it out. He was asking her to trust Him, and because she believed, she carried the greatest miracle the world has ever known. Maybe you've been believing for something, but you're starting to doubt. The delay is making you question if it will ever happen. But let me remind you, God's timing is perfect. He is never early, never late, and just because you don't see a way doesn't mean He doesn't have one. Ephesians 3:20 says that God is able to do exceedingly abundantly above all that we ask or think. That means His plan is bigger than your plan. His dream for your life is greater than what you can imagine. The enemy wants you to focus on the obstacles, to be discouraged by the delays, to believe the lie that it's never going to happen. But I came to tell you today, don't give up. You serve the God of the impossible, the same God who opened blind eyes, who caused barren women to give birth, who made walls fall with a shout. That same God is working behind the scenes for you. You may not see it yet, but the miracle is already on the way. So get your faith up. Start believing again. Start declaring His promises. Start praising Him before you see the answer. Because when you trust the God of the impossible, you'll see breakthroughs, favor, and blessings beyond what you ever imagined. Nothing is too hard for Him. No matter what you're going through today, I want to remind you, it's only temporary. The trouble, the disappointment, the setback, it may feel permanent, but it's not. The challenges you're facing are just a chapter, not the whole story. God has a plan, and His plan is eternal. He is working behind the scenes, and what He has spoken over your life will come to pass. Too often, when we go through difficulties, we start to believe that's how it's always going to be. The enemy whispers, you'll always struggle. You'll always be alone. Things will never change. But that's a lie. The storm may be raging, but the storm doesn't last forever. The sickness, the financial trouble, the loneliness, it's all subject to change. 2 Corinthians 4:17 says, for our light and momentary troubles are achieving for us an eternal glory that far outweighs them all. Notice, Paul calls them momentary troubles. That means they won't last forever. What you're facing today is temporary, but God's plan for you is eternal. Think about Joseph. He had a dream that he would be a great leader, but instead of stepping into that promise right away, he was betrayed by his brothers, sold into slavery, falsely accused, and thrown into prison. It looked like his life was over, but what Joseph didn't know was that God was setting him up for something greater. The prison was temporary. The false accusations were temporary. But God's purpose for Joseph's life was eternal. At just the right time, God opened the door, and Joseph was promoted to second in command over all of Egypt. What looked like a setback was actually a setup for greater things. Maybe today you're in a season that doesn't make sense. You've been praying, believing, doing the right thing, but nothing is changing. The enemy wants you to get discouraged, to think that God has forgotten you. But let me remind you, what you're going through is not the end. God is still in control, and His plan is bigger than what you see. Isaiah 55:8-9 says, for my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, declares the Lord. As the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts. You may not understand why things are happening the way they are, but God does. He knows the end from the beginning. What looks like a delay is actually divine positioning. The closed door, the disappointment, the struggle, it's all part of His greater plan. David understood this. Before he became king, he spent years running from King Saul, hiding in caves, living in the wilderness. He could have thought, God, you anointed me to be king. Why am I going through all this trouble? But what David didn't realize was that the hardship was preparing him. The battles he fought in the wilderness made him into the leader he was destined to be. God is doing the same thing in your life. The trials, the delays, the disappointments, they are not wasted. He is using them to refine you, to strengthen you, to get you ready for the next level. So don't let a temporary season make you lose sight of God's eternal plan. What you see today is not the final outcome. The sickness is not permanent. The financial struggle is not permanent. The loneliness is not permanent. God's blessings, His favor, His purpose for your life, that's what's eternal. Psalm 35 says, weeping may last for a night, but joy comes in the morning. That means your morning is coming. The breakthrough is on the way. The favor is on the way. So hold on, stay in faith, keep declaring His promises, because your situation is temporary, but God's plan for your life will last forever.